Welcome to On Block Off Block by AeroCloud. On Block Off Block explores the exciting and ever-growing aviation industry with guests working in and with airports, and is hosted by AeroCloud CEO George Richardson.
In this episode, George speaks to VP of Operations and Public Safety at Sarasota Bradenton International Airport, Lionel Guilbert, about Lionel's journey into aviation from the French military, how SRQ became one of the fastest growing airports in the US, and George's bathroom dilemma when visiting SRQ in 2019.
Welcome to On Block Off Block. How are you doing today?
I'm good, George. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, we had some little bit difficulties starting there with me not hitting the record button. I was just about to say that we've known each other for an awful long time. There's probably loads of information that we want to cram into this sort of next 30 minutes that maybe we're not even going to be able to cover. So maybe this is a part of a trilogy. But right. Nice to have you on, and thank you for joining us. We've shared an awful lot since meeting. You're one of the most interesting guys I've met on my journey in aviation. You've been an incredible supporter of our business, and I thank you dearly for that. You've been a great product manager, telling us how to do things, how not to do things. You and Evan and your team have done a great job of that. You're also a car lover, an aviation lover, and you're very effective at what you do, and that's proved in 30 years of experience directly at SRQ, which is absolutely incredible, and congratulations on that. I wanted to get into all of that, but I think for my benefit as well as people listening, you have quite an interesting story and an interesting way of adopting a love for aviation. So I'd like to sort of start right at the very start, delve into a little bit about what Lionel looked like before joining Air Force in France, and then what your journey into America, and then looking back on that 30 years at SRQ. So let's take it all back. Could you give us a sort of a rough idea of your upbringing and what it was like to grow up in Africa?
Yeah. Okay. So I was born of French parents who in Morocco, and themselves were also born of French parents in Morocco. So it was two generations at least. And I grew up there until I came basically to this country, to the United States. Growing up there was really cool. You realize that much later. You know, when you're a kid and you're growing and you're a teenager, you think it's not the most pleasant place. You want to be somewhere else and everything. But looking back, it was really a great place to be. You know, as a kid, we always went with my parents on trips throughout the country. To the beach for the weekends and stuff like that. So I did a lot of surfing. I'm paying the price today with skin cancer treatments, but it is what it is.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But yeah, my dad, he's the one who put the aviation seed in me, basically. He started flying himself at a very young age, a very small G airport next to Casablanca, where we grew up, both him and I. And I always heard his stories that he started flying when he was basically 14, taking lessons. And I knew he was a pilot from a very young age when I was growing up. And one day, him and a couple of friends bought a Piper Vagabond, which is like a Piper Cub, just tricycle gear, and Cool. Kind of restored it. And I remember spending weekends at that airport, you know, and smelling the paint that we're spraying and seeing the plane come together. It was a canvas plane.
Wow.
I think it was a 4-seater, so two in the front and a small bench in the back. And I think that was the first general aviation flight I ever took with my dad. So I remember he was in the front and I was in the back on that bench. But a second time I was in the front and I got to play with the controls a little bit and feel the plane. So that was really great. That's when I started really liking aviation.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what did your parents do? Were they working at that airport at the time, or
not at all? They were not into aviation for work. They had initially, when I was quite young, they had a auto parts and accessories business, basically. And over time, my dad switched to dove into the tourism business in Morocco. It was basically just. Before that, the people just went to hotels and resorts and stayed there. But he started basically the what you call adventure tourism in Morocco. So we'd take tourists that came from mostly France and put him in Land Rovers, Santanas, the big lands, and took him around the desert for like week-long or 2-week-long trips. Sleep in the tent. There was no infrastructure or anything. There was hardly any roads where we were going. It was all dirt roads, and we did that a lot. That was the last job he had over there. Yeah.
Awesome, and that would explain your first job, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
my first job in Morocco was working for him as a driver and guide. So I did a few. I learned from him over a couple of tours, and of course, I knew the country pretty well, also in the language. So that helps a lot.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as me. I mean, some of my earliest memories is my dad dragging me into his office on Saturday mornings because he couldn't
Yeah,
get through the amount of work in the week, and I was left to my own devices. And then as I got a little bit older, I started helping out. My dad was in the sort of the building and construction business, so I had a lot of experience doing that, and some very fond
yeah,
memories of that as well, which I'm sure you do. And talk to me a little bit about the cultural differences, knowing what you know now. I mean, you've been in America for 30 plus years now.
32. Yeah,
32. I mean, Morocco has grown as a country, as a destination, massively, massively in that time. I mean,
yeah,
I first visited, I believe, in 2050, and I went back in 2020, and it was completely different. So you must have seen some massive changes. So talk to us about the changes in Morocco, and then culturally how different growing up in Morocco versus to you starting your career and starting your family, I assume, in America.
yeah. So yeah, growing up there, as a kid, you don't really realize the growth that's happening around you so much. But I remember, when I was in my 15, 16, I could see some suburbs starting to expand outside of the limits that we were used to of the city. And then the big cities, the bigger cities in the countryside also were starting to grow. But it really, I left Morocco in 1992, and I hadn't really returned that for quite a bit, for quite a much spent a time. I would say 3-4 years at a time before I would go back. And then my father passed away in 2004 over there, and that was the last time I went there really for any length of time. But I went back in 2019 with my family, took him there, and I was just completely dumbfounded at the changes that I've seen, the size of the cities, the amount of buildings that didn't exist where I remember, riding bicycles in the countryside we used to go camping or something. Now it's just a suburb of Casablanca. And the cities is kind of becoming like the east coast of Florida, where the cities are just growing along the coast and just touching each other and just becoming one megapolis.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
very it's a little disappointing because knowing how it was when I grew up and it was so pleasant, now it looks like it'll be a fight to be there every day and fighting traffic and stuff like that. So, and my
Yeah,
friends that I grew up with, one of them went there recently and he told me the same thing. It's like you can forget, what it used to look like where we used to live in the small kind of quaint neighborhood. It's part of downtown now. It's so
yeah,
grown. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think then coming to America, then did you say in '92? Did you
I came
say?
in '92. Yeah,
Okay, cool. And was
yeah.
was your first job straight from, you had the stint in the Air Force, which we'll come back to a little bit when we finish on
Yep.
this American journey, but was your first job in America at SRQ?
No, so I came here to learn how to fly. So I went to a flight school. I was
Cool.
here at SRQ. So I've been at this airport pretty much every day since I arrived here, one way or another. So I did my flight training. That took about 6 months. And then I started a college degree. And during that time, I got a job at the flight school doing like aircraft cleaning, moving them around the ramp a little bit for just a very short time. And because during the first 6 months of my college classes, there was an internship opening here at the airport and you'd get credit for it. So I applied for it and I got it. And it was an internship at the noise abatement office, unpaid. And it was fine. So it was kind of interesting, doing something different. And that's how I got my foot in the door.
Cool. I mean, knowing you over these last couple of years, I know that you're passionate about aviation, but you're also passionate about growth. And we're going to come
Yeah.
on to later about the journey that SRQ has been on in that 30 years, which is significant as one of the US's fastest, if not the fastest growing airport in the country, year over year, with sustained growth from a very small amount of gates, which is incredibly impressive. But let's just go back one more step on sort of the Lionel history piece. You did a stint in the military, the French Air Force. You
Yeah.
will have been around a lot of pretty serious planes. And for those avgeeks listening, did you get to see some really cool stuff that you could share?
Yeah. Yeah. So after I was done with my high school in Morocco, there's no options but to go to France. So I went to France twice, 1 year, tried different stints in different degrees, like tourism or international business. I didn't really like it. But what it does is it breaks a rule where if you're born overseas and you stay overseas until a certain age, you don't have to do your military service in the French system. The minute you set foot in France for more than a vacation, then you're in the system. So that pushed me into having to do my military service. And I got lucky where, because of my degree and my background and stuff like that, I got to choose where to go. So I chose the French Air Force, and the base I was, it was in the south of France, just outside of Marseille, on Salon-de-Provence. So could be worse. And it was not an operational base. It was the French Air Force Academy, basically. So there is no weapons on base. It's just the bare minimum and stuff like that. So you get thrown into the military and you think boot camp, the military the whole time is boot camp, but it's just a short amount of time at the beginning, and then the first Gulf War started. So things kind of changed a little bit, and of course you're in your 20s, you're worrying that you're going to be sent over, but that kind of quickly got out of the picture, basically. And I stayed on base. But because of the war, the heightened level of alert on the base, they needed extra staff. So I did a lot of extra patrols with the commandos, the security troops, basically, for a couple of months. And then I was sent over for administrative duties to the base commander's office. So that was really good. I was
Cool.
taking his mail, bringing him coffee. I mean, it's a good spot to be. Driving
Learning a
him
lot.
around back and forth off base with his car. And again, it's the French, close to the French Riviera in the south. And because it's a Air Force Academy, the whole month of August, the base is closed. Basically, there's no classes, so it's minimum staff on there. And we had the vehicle, and we can go out to the beach at the end of the day after our duties and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. So I did see a few, a few GA planes, because that's how they start, with gliders and then single engine trainers. And then they move over to the Fouga Magister, which is twin jet V-tail. And a lot of private owners own those planes now because they're out of the French system, so people buy them. And I got to fly one of these with an American Air Force captain who was a liaison officer with the base. So he had a certain amount of hours to do, and he took me one day. So that was pretty cool, flying the south of France mountains there. And then I saw a few cool planes come by just because of the nature of an Air Force base. So some C-130s, some I can't remember the French version of it, a Transal, which is a smaller version, two twin turboprops. A few Mirage once in a while would stop by. But the most important thing that was the coolest thing on that base is the home base of the French air team, so La Patrouille de France. And they would just practice there all the time. They would take off. They would go out over the Mediterranean, come back, practice over the base. So, every couple of days you have an air show, basically. So that was great.
Amazing.
And because I was in that base commander's office, I got to make a request to fly with them, and it was granted. So I got to fly the back seat in one of the Alpha jets there. So that was really cool. It wasn't with the full team. It was just two planes side by side doing maneuvers. But it's something you never forget. That's for sure.
So pretty hard to give up moving from one of my favorite places in the world. One of my favorite for its challenges. Nice is one of my favorite airports to fly into, and spend time down in the south of France is genuinely more and more of a dream of mine, as I find it is one of the only places that I can really relax in. So really hard to leave, but I suppose war is a pretty good reason too, and you got to have your reasons, right? So we landed back in America now. We're in the noise abatement office, is that right?
Yeah. Well, there's actually a very good link between the French Air Force service and why I'm here. So one guy that was sharing a room with just came back from Dolphin Aviation Flight School here. And he was starting his service. So I got in, we started talking and everything. And I knew at that time I was going to I wanted to do a flight training. So I was looking around different flight schools and from overseas, from France, you have to go to the States because it's a third of the price as far as the training. And then most of it is in Texas, Florida, and California in the South. And this guy told me, well, this school here is in Dolphin at Sarasota is owned by French people. So you do all your paperwork in France and then get your visa and you go over there. So you don't have to worry about a thing. So that's what I did. And that landed me here in Sarasota as opposed to somewhere in Texas or another flight school somewhere else, even in Florida. And because I was here and I went to school here, I started the internship and that's why I'm here. So there's very little things that happens in life. You don't realize how it affects the rest of your life, just sharing the same room with another guy. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And they're the moments, I suppose, that make life super interesting, especially from a point of reflection when you look back at those sort of pivotal moments. But so back on then to, I mean, on a side note, Dolphin's still at the airport, right?
Yeah, Dolphin still exists. So, it's a different owner, but the FBO is still there. Yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely crazy. So SRQ, we've been there now for 30 years. What's special about it?
It's my home airport. So because I did all my flight training here, I was very familiar with the airfield before I even started working here. So I knew the runways, the taxiways, the FBOs on the field, the terminal, who were the big players, the instrument approach, the tower, the FAA people, all these things that you deal with as a pilot. So, and that helped me get to the position of being hired here full time because I was so familiar with the place already. That's really, I feel like it's my home airport. I've been here almost every day, one way or another. It's a decent size without being a really big airport, but yet it's more than a small GA with just, two commercial flights a day. So I really like that level of activity. There's been times in the 90s and 2000s where it was, quieter than we would have liked it, but that's gone away from that for sure.
Sure. I think maybe from knowing you guys is that there's a super small management team. Decisions are processed and made incredibly fast. You all have a very professional relationship. You're a team in the broadest sense and in the most professional sense. Some of the quickest decision making I've seen at a authority owned or a government owned asset effectively. You seem to come together in times of need. You're very honest, and those guys have been in place for a long time. You're sort of the backbone to a lot of that without knowing it. In a way, I see that a lot as the way that people communicate. You're super calculated and quiet, and every time that you speak, people really, really listen, and you've really built a great respect up there. So I see that from the outside in. But why is it, and we'll come on to Sarasota's significant growth, but what makes, in your current position, you keep coming to work with that same enthusiasm? Because you don't need to keep coming there for 30 years. There's something that's holding you there. What is it that you're really good at, and what do you see that your biggest value add to the airport is?
That's a good question, and I don't want to have a big ego or something, but I guess I do things right because I've been promoted time and time over since being an intern to a senior position now, an executive. Like I said, I guess people like the way I work, the way I make decisions. Try to be very rational and cool and collected when I try to make those things. But what keeps me going here is definitely the airport environment. Just seeing airplanes going by and I have cameras in my office and I look up at all the time to see what airplane arrived and where is it going, which gate is it going, and that's the new one. I haven't seen this one yet or something. So it's really just watching planes and being on the field every day. The people that work here are fantastic also. There's really never any animosity or fights or anything like that. I remember also that the airport authority for this airport is an independent authority. We're not a county or city owned airport. So we have really, we run ourselves like a private entity basically. So
which helps
like
an awful lot.
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
think a lot of aviation professionals listening, specifically
Yeah.
in the US, would really like that
Yeah, that definitely
flexibility.
helps with the decision making process. We don't have to tell anybody what we want to do. There's no, we're here and this is our airport, and we decide what to do. So that definitely helps the quick actions for sure.
Sure. Well, let's go a little bit down deeper into that then. So when we first started working together, passenger numbers have quadrupled since we started working
Yes,
together,
since we
right?
started. Yeah.
But we've kept most of the assets, i.e., gates, pretty much the same, only until recently. What's the key, and what are the key drivers and learnings that you can share?
You mean how we manage to have this growth without changing? So yeah, we have the same 13 gates that we had since 1989 when the terminal opened. We are in the midst of expansion, but they're not in use yet. In fact, last year we did a record year with one less gate. We because construction, one gate was obstructed, so we couldn't use it. So there's really three things that are key to that happening. The first one is to have a lease language that is favorable to share gates. So our signatory gates, for those airlines that are signatory, they are not exclusive use gates. They're preferential, which means they have their schedule comes first. But if the gate is not in use for like 2 3 hours, and we need a gate to put somebody else, we can do it. That's the key. And pretty much all the carriers that have a lease with us agree that it's great because they know that they can be in that situation where they need one more gate that they don't have, and there's one open, on the other side, and they can use that for that irregular operation or something, or delayed
And
flight.
is that on point and topic one being preferential gates under contract effectively with airlines? That's relatively unique in a way, and much more in favor latterly at US airports, right? Typically, there was
Yeah,
a leased model where an aircraft an airline had the rights to use in perpetuity gate one, for
yeah,
example. So preference effectively means that an airline can have that, but it has the preference over the slots in which they use it, and then the airport can use that gate for whatever it wants in the times that flight is not coming in, right? And
that's
that means
correct.
that you can utilize that gate significantly more, and that's
Oh yeah,
part of the reason we come in, right? We help you
yep,
give that visibility to both the stakeholder, i.e., the airline, the ground handler or the handler, and the airport, and we act, I suppose, as an intermediary through one sort of dashboard. But for airports listening, that's is that recent SRQ, or has it been there since 10 years plus? Because it's
no,
kind of a journey that the legal team need to go on as well, right? Small airport need to start pushing back on these these lease gates that are tied up, and they need to start communicating that they need to use them so that they can do the best with the tarmac they've got. Because a really easy option, which I see a lot of times in America, is let's just go and build 50 new gates. And
yeah,
actually, reality, they haven't utilized the gates that they've already got. And tarmac, for example, is shed loads more expensive
oh yeah,
than a software application or,
oh
or
yeah.
or better communication or better legals.
Yeah, yeah. So like we say, we can't make any more land here, so we landlocked and we're limited with what we can expand. So we have to make the best of use of what we have. And I think the for a long time we're exclusive gate leasehold, for the carriers, but we had 13 gates and five carriers with a gate each, so there was never an issue. As when we started to grow, we realized we got to find a way to be able to use those gates when we need. So we changed the lease language, and the legal team does that and worked with the carrier's legal team, and everybody agreed, and then they signed for 10 years actually. The last
Fantastic.
the next agreement is for 10 years. Usually it was 5 to 7. But yeah, that's one of the biggest hurdle you have to go through, because if you have a gate you can't use because the airline said no, you're not allowed to use that gate, where you can't expand, you can't have any more flights, so you're limited to that. So the second part, the second key of that second leg of that three-leg stool is having common use. So if you have the gate, that's great. But if the airline doesn't have their reservation system or booking system or boarding system at the gate, there's nothing they can do. They have to like manually process passengers, and they won't do that. They'll just hold their plane on the ramp for a little longer until their gates become available. So having common use system at the gate where every gate can be used by any airline, that's the next key. That's the next big thing.
Can
And
we just
we,
delve into that a little bit, though, Lionel?
yeah,
Because I'm thinking about airports of similar size that have got growth challenges at the moment. We've seen, you know, it's a great time to be in our business at the moment because airports in the US are growing at the rate that they're growing at, and people listening to this, I really want to understand. I want them to understand why you've been successful. Common use at every gate. There's a nuance to that there, which is that SRQ, in my opinion, were very open with airlines that they had to be on the common use platform. A lot of airlines have a lot of control at a lot of small, medium-sized airports across the US. Therefore, they want proprietary on lease gates, and they're holding the airport back from growing. Would you agree?
that's true. And we do have some gates like that. So some carriers are saying, no, we want to keep our proprietary system. And we have nothing against that. But we do have the common use system next to it at that same gate. This way, if they're not using it, somebody else can use. That is not the proprietary system. That's the key. We
Yeah,
have
and I think
several carriers that prefer their system, but we also have some that prefer the common use system because it's more efficient than their own proprietary at their gates.
sure, and we've seen a massive change in the, call it, the power dynamics of the relationship at small and
Mhm.
medium sized airports. In Florida, I believe I read somewhere there's 100 people a minute moving to Florida at the moment. Post COVID, people want a bit of the beaches. They want that, what was cheaper property prices than
Yeah,
Los
those
Angeles,
days are
etc.,
gone.
etc. Those days are gone. But there was a massive drive towards that, and now the ultra low cost carriers are coming in on seasonal service. They're running
Yeah,
maybe one service a week as a trial basis. They're spreading their routes and maximizing that aircraft with better configuration. They're now moving 300 passengers, not 50 passengers,
right.
and that common use element is super important. And I think for any small to medium sized airports listening, sit down with your airlines like SRQ have and explain why building
Yeah,
more gates is not the answer and doing better with what you've got, because there is, in reality, it's one more monitor on a
right.
proprietary gate,
That's right.
and on a non-proprietary gate, the software is in common use anyway for any provider, is a gateway to the airline application. That's all it is.
Right.
So airlines should not be afraid of that, in my opinion. But I would say that in my position.
Yeah,
But I really see that communication at airports needs to be that, hey, we're in this together. And I think that
yeah,
paradigm shift of relationships has really moved, and something that at Aerocloud we desperately try and support.
yeah. Plus, the other thing too is when you have ultra low cost carriers who want to come to your airport, the last thing they want to do is spend money. So when you tell them, well, we have a common use system, we'll put you on there. You don't have to bring any equipment, proprietary equipment, or everything. Just bring your stanchions, your branded, sign or stanchions or something like that, and that's all you need. So
Yep,
they're really happy with that. That's what makes
absolutely.
them decide to, okay, we can do that, and they can do a test. And once in a while, we'll have a carrier that is like, well, it's not working out, but it's not because of our equipment or anything. It's just that their city and passenger is not really matching the market here. But I think it
Yeah,
only happened one time, really.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
what's the third leg of the bar stool?
The third is now that you have all these gates and they're available to other carriers, you have to be able to manage them and see where you can have slots. When you have empty slots, how you can manage the schedule for the carriers, and that's where the AeroCloud gate management system was really a savior. And honestly, we couldn't have done it without it. We could have done maybe a year, but not to the level where we are today. Absolutely not. So that is key. It has to be something very intuitive and self-populating. So it's great to have a system and software, but if you have to enter flights either once a month or every day, because there's flights that only fly certain days, that is too power intensive and manpower intensive, and we didn't want that at all. So we
Yeah,
needed something that was automated, automatic, and then easy change. Not only have an instant picture of what the gate situation is, where the schedule looks like, where there's an empty slot, and where there's conflicts with delayed flights and stuff like that, but also where you have minimum manual input into it. So
sure,
that's when we discovered our cloud, and it's like this is what we need. Absolutely,
sure.
it was a no
Do
brainer.
you remember the first day we met?
Yeah, it was in Orlando at the FAC conference, and you and Ian were there, and you're like, "Hey, I want to show you something," and then I look at your screen and there's my airport. It's like, how'd you do that? My flights are here, and it's live. And it's like, wow, this is impressive. So I was sold at that moment that I didn't go any further.
Good. Well, we've had a super long partnership for for those who don't know. We pretty much have every AeroCloud software product within SRQ.
Right.
You've been instrumental into feeding into our product roadmap. Yourself and Evan and everybody in your team has been fantastic. So I thank you for that, and I
Sure.
appreciate that. Rather than make this a sort of a sales pitch for our product, I want people to get value out of your experience. And what are the core things that you can do now with software that you couldn't do? So we've talked about gate and stand reservations, allocations. We've talked about connecting airlines to the airport and negotiating that relationship a lot better. We've also talked about using the same system, and then latterly we've also talked about visibility of what's actually happening, and that spans a lot greater than just merely that visibility. And is there anything else you can think about that has helped you since adopting called quote unquote software? Any reporting or
Yeah.
anything?
So the one good thing with AeroCloud software is it's shareable to an unlimited number of people. So not only we use it for our gate system management and we manage our flight from the airport operations standpoint, but because we can share and the data that's available, like the predicted number of passengers throughout the day, that's critical for several of our tenants. Not only TSA, although they kind of have their own planning system software, but when you're gonna have like rush at the checkpoint, or more people at the curb being picked up for a rush of arrivals. So our police department looks at that and is like, okay, we need to put more people on the arrival curb at that time of the day, and then more in the departure in the morning, something like that, so they can adjust their schedule. Same thing with the janitorial stuff. When you have a rush of flights coming in, you have to clean the restroom pretty quickly after that. Our concessions also like to know when they're going to have a big number of people, passengers, um, before they want to grab something before their flight or something. So we share that data with them and they have access to it and they can see instantly, okay, we have a peak at 10 o'clock and then another one at 2 p.m., just as an example. So they can use that a lot. The rental cars, they also know, even though they have a flight schedule, you look at a FIDS or something, you just have lines of flights and then with the time. But when you look at a chart that shows you a peak and valleys of when your passengers are in the terminal building, that's more powerful than having to see what time you're going to have a rush of cars or taxis. Also, we share with the taxis. I don't know if the TNCs, we don't provide it to them, but that's something they could. They just look at the flight schedule basically, and when people arrive or need to go. But that's some of the value that you add to other users that are not necessarily airlines. They can use that to better plan their schedule throughout the day and their staffing module as well, because you don't need 30 people if there's nobody at your counter, and you need more when people are here. So
Absolutely. And I think we've seen that across all industries. But
yeah,
from my experience, when I was looking at this market and building this business, it was abundantly clear to me that the software effectively wasn't really software as other industries know it. And I think that way that the legacy incumbents sell their software by user license, and
yeah,
they effectively are reinventing sort of older ways of doing things through marketing and sort of, in our opinion anyway, putting layers on sort of very old technology debt. It becomes very hard to give it to everybody, because that then impacts the fundamental business model. It becomes very
sure,
hard to continue to innovate when you've got a heap load of debt. And one thing I valued massively about the growth of our company is yourself and your team and other teams that have given honest feedback about what you need. And I would hope that would be reciprocated in our product team delivering for you a product that becomes repeatable to other airports, but uses the learnings that you've done in developing it. And for that, yeah, we're super pumped about that, and hopefully for many other years.
yeah.
So let's go back to a little bit about myself and you. We've had some kind of funny moments on airport property. I'd like to be in control of the narrative for the story I'm about to tell, but
Okay.
you can call it out if there's any extra details. But I was very fortunate enough to see Air Force Two, I believe,
Air Force Two. Yeah.
with
It was
one of
Vice
the very
President
high
Kennedy.
up vice president, yeah, in the political system within America. And I was visiting at the airport. We were doing an operations conference for the Florida Airports Council, and Aerocloud were sponsoring lunch. And for those who don't know what that means, we basically buy the sandwiches in return for allowing us to pitch our product in front of every airport operations member over lunch. It's kind of the deal. And we've been doing that for years in Florida. We have 6 or 7 customers now in the state. It's a really important state for us. But there was a state visit or a visit, a fundraiser under the Trump admission, I believe. And you said to me, do you want to come in the truck to see Air Force Two
Air Force
land?
Two. Yeah.
And I'm a yes theory guy, right? I'm not going to get this opportunity elsewhere. But at this lunch, I had consumed a very large amount of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and we are going up and down the runway doing the runway inspection, and
Yeah. With the
like
Secret
many
Service.
with the Secret Service either side of me in the back of your pickup truck, and they're watching eyes on you, and you've got your hands on the wheel, and all these
Yeah.
sorts of crazy things to make sure that we're doing the safest job possible. And we pull up, and I say, I'm a well traveled man, highly jet lagged, and need to go to the bathroom. And the response was, if you get out the car, effectively you will be shot in the back of the head. You have no choice but to wait. Well, with about a litre of Dunkin' Donuts coffee in me, um, I'm not afraid to say it, but the option was get shot in the back of the head or relieve myself into a Dunkin' Donuts cup in the back of your truck, in front of 2 Secret Service guys. So we've shared many funny moments. That one is potentially a low point, and I did WhatsApp Ian that evening saying, "You're never going to believe what's happened here." And
I'm sure.
yeah, basically that need to relieve myself saved my life effectively. But it was a
Yeah.
very memorable day and something
That's
that we
good.
always laugh about internally
Yeah.
here at Aerocloud.
That's true.
So that's good. You have a massive love for cars, French cars in particular. I'm massively into my cars. Not so much actually into my French cars. I'm more into my German cars and my Italian cars, which I know you like as well. What is it about cars that's gripped you? And you share a lot of that same passion with your family and namely your son. What
Yeah.
is it? What do you think?
Again, it comes back to how you were brought up, So my dad it was in the car business selling parts and accessories. So, I hang out the place as a kid, and you see, uh, different type of steering wheels and accessories and wide, what you gaudy wheels and rims, which I remember they were exclusive importers of these. So, and I think they still exist. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, you hang around this thing, and then my dad used like to change car every year or so. So it was constantly evolving different cars. And they did a lot of rallies also. Before I was born, my dad was doing the Moroccan rally just about every year. He started go-karting when he was young and did like street rallying and stuff like that. So it's always been in the culture in our family all the time.
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, being in Morocco, at that time, you didn't have like extensive dealerships or garage repair shops, stuff like that. So a lot of things you did yourself, working on the car yourself. So again, that puts the seed into your brain, like, hey, this is kind of cool. I like it. Anything mechanical, I kind of liked. And then I kind of like forgot about it, or just to say. But when I came here, I became friend with a dear friend who passed away last December. But he was in the cars. So of course I got here. First thing I did was to buy a Cadillac. Student, a flight student was like, I need a car, so I bought a $500 Cadillac Eldorado, black and gold, with no AC
Cool.
in Florida in summer. That was great. But yeah, it's like I couldn't believe I bought a big American car, and I was cruising, listening to the radio, and then I got another one and another one, stuff like that. So over time, I got more reasonable modern cars because more reliable. But yeah, and then I met this guy here at the airport, and he had his own little collection of cars, luxury cars like Rolls Royce and Ferraris, and he liked to buy like 1 or 2 cars a year, and I like to work on his car. And he saw that I could work again because I learned in Morocco as a kid. And it's like, you want to do something right, you do it yourself there. And he had a Ferrari, a classic, 1972 Ferrari, and he was having some problem with the windshield wipers, and I looked at it. It's like, well, this is the same as the Fiat my mom used to have in Morocco, and it's true
Yeah,
enough. It was
exactly.
a lot of parts were the same. The dash vents for the air, a lot of the the handles, the buttons, the toggle switches. And like, yeah, I've worked on. I can work on that. So I started working for on his car for him and with him, and that's how I started. And that uh, expanded from there. So
And that's
and my
now
son,
into your
yeah,
son is into
yeah,
them as well, right?
he's very obsessed with the subject when he likes it, and now he just knows just about every car in the world and who made it and what year they changed the blinker design and all that kind of stuff. So it's just amazing the memory he's got. He's absorbing everything. He's more into modern cars a lot more, but he doesn't mind riding in the old cars with me once in a while also. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Well, we could talk for days on cars. We'll save
yeah.
the listeners on the car story. I got a couple more just as we round out here. Massive career spanning pretty much everything at the airport, being part of the decision-making team, seeing a 4x growth in a very short space of time, still growing, still breaking records and growing within the community. What's the biggest thing that's helped you in your career that you could pass on to others looking to achieve the same things?
That's a good question. Definitely. I mean, I had to progressively finish my degrees, go to school. So it took me a while to finish all my degrees. And then I thought I was done. And I realized, okay, if I want to keep on going higher in the organization, either this one or another, I need one more degree or this one more certification or stuff like that. So I think that's an important one. It's just, it doesn't really matter exactly what you certify or what your degree is in, but I think people like to see that you have worked for it. You put the effort into getting a higher education. If you ask me, years ago, do you think you're going to be, an executive at an airport? I'd be laughing, really, really bad. That was never something I planned for, and I didn't go for that kind of degree at all. Or my high school grades were less than desirable, as we say. But I think it's once you put the effort, and people see that you put the effort into everything you do, and you take it seriously without overdoing it. That's definitely what's helped me stay in the organization and move up year after year. And I got lucky that I keep following the person directly above me. Since I moved from noise abatement to airport operations, every time he got promoted, I replaced him. So because we have this great working relationship, he knows me, I know him for 25 years now. We know what to expect from each other, and it's always been pretty much I follow you wherever. When you
Yeah,
leave,
you
I'll take
strike
you.
me
That
as
kind of deal. Yeah.
an incredibly loyal,
Right.
robust
Right.
operator. And moving away, though, from professional and education for a second, though, do you not think a lot of the well-traveled nature, the fact that you've had to deal with lots of things at the airport? I mean, you've had some crazy times at the airport, if I recall. You had someone who broke the perimeter fencing and
Yeah.
crashed through the baggage area in a Ford
Yeah.
150. The fact that the airport is part of your DNA, I'm pretty sure that you've had those calls at dinner and had to leave the
Yeah.
family to come back to the airport multiple times at ridiculous hours in the morning, etc., etc. Your commitment level is very, very high. Do you think that you would have a success would be has been? Do you think that you would have been successful if you hadn't had seen and dealt with lots of different people and travelled?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's part of it. Your dedication and your reliability, especially when you're in airport operations, because you're not a first responder, but you have to be there when something happens. So you're right. I had my share of plane crashes, plane incidents, vehicle crashes. Through the fence, through the building. It's 2 a.m. and you get the phone call. You got to get up and go. So, and you're right. One time, plane crash. I was having dinner with my family. It's like, okay, we got to go. So that's something that goes really far when people know that they can rely on you. And then the other thing is because you've been here so long, you have historical knowledge of why things are today It's like, well, because at that time, it was the best decision we could do or something like that. So, and as I was looking at a employee chart not too long ago, I'm in the top 5 in seniorities now. So people come to you because they know you've been here for so long. You have the answer to why it's like this, or why didn't we do that back then, or something. So it's a good feeling because people count on you for these kind of things, and it's a good feeling to have that you can have the answer, whether it's aviation related or not even. Be right. I've been traveling around different places around the world. I have a different culture growing up. I see things maybe a little differently, so maybe that kind of helps a little bit also. Yeah.
Massively. Well, I see that in your leadership at the airport, and
Okay.
bearing in mind, I got 32 or 33 airport visits under me this year, for example. And yeah, like I said, you guys are one of the best teams I've had the pleasure of working with. So that kind of rounds us up. I mean, we can talk for days on some of the other things, but we're approaching the sort of the end here. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, are you comfortable with sharing any mediums? Are you a LinkedIn guy or an email guy?
I'm on LinkedIn, yeah.
Can anybody contact you about their careers?
Yeah, no problem. Feel free to share my email. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I'm on the airport website. I think our email is also there under the staff. Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. Well, Lionel, you're an incredible advocate for our business and our product. I can just thank you and the team for that. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening to that. However, we might cut the story out or leave it in, depending on what our guys that edit this up think about the professionalism of that. But I think part of the what I love working with you and the team is that you're super honest and you're super on it. I mean, that airport packs a massive punch. It processes many, many more passengers than other airports with the same amount of infrastructure. And I'm glad to have been a small part in that. And kudos to you guys. You've smashed it. You've won the game.
Yeah, and we see it. We talked to some other airports, and they have 23 gates, and they process the same number of passengers as we do, and they're like, we're running out of gates. Like, well, we're laughing a little bit at that. So you don't need more gates. You need the aircar. That's what you need. And I gotta say,
thank you.
It's true. I mean, it's how we make it, right? But I gotta say, it's a mutual respect, and you have a product that works so well, and it's so seamless, and the crew and your staff are so responsive to when we have an issue, which is quite rare, or when we have a concern or we want to suggest something. You guys listen to it, to us. So it's mutual feeling. Really, it's really good. So, and I think you're right. We've known each other for a while, and you're also very honest. My little story for that was the recent trip I took to Frankfurt. I was just being very sick, and you looked at me as like, are you okay? Because you look like you're going to die. I'm telling you because you're my friend. And nobody else was telling me that. But yeah, I knew I was probably not looking quite
good. Go back to the hotel.
Yeah.
Get some rest.
Go back to the hotel. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much from all of my team. And I've really enjoyed doing this. I think there's probably some more in here that we could record. Sure. I look forward to many more trips seeing you and the guys. And thank you very much, Lionel.
All right. Thanks, George. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
Thank you for listening to On Block, Off Block by AeroCloud. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, and remember to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with future episodes. On Block, Off Block is hosted by George Richardson and produced by Alex Greaves.